This just might be the craziest 90s comic you've never read. Hey comic freaks, and welcome back to Dangerous Comics. I'm your host, Dane Georges, and today we're looking at Batman Mitefall, Legends of the Dark Mite special. And this might sound a little familiar because my third video on the channel I ever did was Legends of the Dark Knight, number 38, which was actually Legends of the Dark Mite by Alan Grant and Kevin O'Neill. And we took a look at this very early in the channel, and it's a pretty fun story about this drug-addled maniac in Gotham that ends up taking a bunch of drugs and seeing Bat-Mite, who is a imp from the fifth dimension, and he ends up being accused for the crimes that he claims that Bat-Mite did and he had no part of. But it's a really fun story. I'll have a link right here that you can click and check that out if you haven't seen this before. You're definitely going to want to check this out first before we check out the next issue. So, I'll pause, I'll wait. You go watch that and come back, all right? All right, you back? You ready? All right, let's check out Batman Mitefall. And now we got the same creative team coming back together. This is still Alan Grant and Kevin O'Neill. And a little bit more context, I talked about this in that video too, but Bat-Mite is a old Silver Age Batman character. We're going to look at this story in the Black Case book, which was stories that inspired Batman R.I.P., which was Grant Morrison's Batman run. And we can see here, Bat-Mite was just this goofy little guy that would come in and mess with Batman, kind of like the imp that would mess with Superman, Mxyzptlk, and they would just have little adventures, and Batman would just kind of send him on his way after he just kind of annoyed the crap out of him. But just kind of a holdover of a really fun Silver Age concept and how goofy and fun comics could be back then. And that is like juxtaposed so well in this comic of looking at the ridiculousness of the 90s with that Silver Age goofiness in mind. And looking right at the cover, this is Mitefall, so it's a direct joke on Knightfall, which was the story where Bane broke Batman's back, and then he was replaced by Azrael as this new extreme Batman of the 90s. And Mitefall was a prestige format comic, meaning it is square bound. I like that they even made the effort of getting Dark Knight crossed out with Mite on the spine. Super cool detail. And there is the back cover. And just like Kevin O'Neill's art is freaking amazing for this. Just look at that roided out Bane. Oh man, there is some fun pages and panels for us to look at. So let's dive on in. And we pick up pretty close to where the last story left off. Our main character of the last story was Bob Overdog, and he was left in Arkham at the end of the last story, and nobody thought he was sane. He kept saying, I saw Bat-Mite, this wasn't me, but nobody was believing him, even Batman. He's in his treatment, and the doctors are telling him he needs to start keeping a diary of his days in Arkham and trying to keep his sanity that way and kind of analyzing what's going on in his mind. And he's telling them that he is sane. He doesn't need this dang diary. He says he wants to be a hero, a champion, and I want to be set loose on the world to fight against the evil that pervades it. To me, that's a sane ambition. Dr. Arkham doesn't agree. So just kind of pointing fun at like how crazy the idea of Batman is in itself. A really fun panel caption here where his straitjacket is kind of the caption box, and then his head. He's lost his mind, lost his head, and it's sitting there. And I also just like the decorations on Arkham where Arkham Asylum, mind your head. And on these like pillars, there's like heads laying there, and his head is kind of almost on this spike of the fence. And Kevin O'Neill's art, I call this out in the last issue too, but I love how he just packs it full of all these funny sayings everywhere where mental is a state of mind, and that's just everywhere. And then we get to see like, what would your diary be if you're just stuck in Arkham? And it's really just like day 1, nothing. Day 2, nothing. Day 3, I had a psychotic break. And it's just stuff like that. And then day 6, somebody blew up Arkham Asylum, which you would think in Gotham might actually happen pretty often, right? But pretty cool, this actually is kind of directly tying into what happened in Knightfall, where Bane blew up Arkham and then set all these criminals loose on the city so it would kind of break Batman down and he couldn't keep up with all of the mayhem. And in that mayhem, we find Joker, and he is walking Dr. Arkham out with like a shotgun pointed to his head. And while he's walking by, he hears Bob Overdog just knocking his dome against the door, trying to get somebody's attention, because he's saying, I'm not even sure what's going on out there. This could be just an earthquake, and I'm just going to die in here. But luckily, someone comes to his rescue, but it's the Joker, and he says, welcome, buddy. You don't know how good it is to see a sane man again. And then Joker says, you're right, I don't, as he's looking at Bob Overdog, who is obviously pretty insane as well. And I love that it says, Bob Overdog, no solids. They're talking. They're both pretty crazy. They're going into song and dance together. But, Joker is a little bit too crazy for Bob, because Joker tells him what his plan is, how he's going to torture Dr. Arkham and everything. He says, torture, escape, recording deal. Are you some kind of maniac? And he's going to start to fight him, and then Joker just kind of does like that Indiana Jones thing where he's not going to tussle with him, he just shoots him. But luckily, Bob survives due to his diary. So, maybe there was a reason that he kept that from the start. And I think that might also be kind of like a reference to like all the times that used to happen in old comics. That happened in the original Two-Face story too, where his coin was the thing that saved him from a bullet. So that's kind of like a classic Batman thing. Really great Joker drawing, just great drawings everywhere. This comic is full of just like dynamic energy and cartooning, just like done so well. But Bob escapes Arkham in the mayhem. I love just like the juxtaposition of kind of like his cartoony characters to this like kind of pretty realistic violence. It's just really well done. But he gets out and he's going to go try to bring some justice to this town. He's on a mission, and he finds these degenerates that are just doing drugs in this abandoned cathedral. And this guy's saying, so what are we going to do? Get doped up and go looking for a fight, or get doped up and go pull a heist? How about we get doped up and then get doped up some more? And this guy, man, I just love abusing illegal substances. So funny. And more of that Kevin O'Neill just like putting writing everywhere. It's like, kiss my donkey, slit to open. And there's Bob just creeping, and he's found his targets. And then he jumps in like a bat. I like how he's using the tails, like the long arms of his straitjacket as kind of like his Batman cape, and we even get a bat in the background kind of reinforcing what he's doing. And he just kind of like nosedives right in here, right on this guy's pile of cocaine, and it goes in his eyes. The drugs go everywhere. That was not the right move. Now these guys are pissed, so they just beat the crap out of him. They put him down on the slab, and they put 3 tabs of acid in his mouth and punch it closed. And then more writing where it says, a fist a day keeps the teeth away. I just love how they're not like really tattoos. It's just like writing. It's so fun. And, this kind of goes against like Bob is reformed. Bob Overdog is reformed. So, he's not trying to do drugs anymore, but now he's been forced. And we cut away and we see Batman is out on patrol tonight, and Batman sees our thugs that just drugged Bob, and he's going to follow after them. But little does Batman know he also has a tail, and we see that Bat-Mite is trying to get his attention because he needs some help. But poor Bat-Mite, he can't get Batman's attention, so he has to go to somebody else. And we see Bob is just kind of fading away, he's kind of nodding off, letting the drugs take him away. And just then, Bat-Mite pops in, and this is like the worst thing that could happen, because last time when Bob took a bunch of drugs, he saw this 5th dimensional imp, and now he's right back in the same place. He's like, I was trying to remember why I'd ever given up drugs when suddenly I did. And then Bat-Mite pops in, and he says, and the nightmare began all over again. I said, oh no, Bat-Mite. And then here's where Bob, he kind of takes us kind of goes back into his old ways. He goes to violence right away. This guy really messed up his life, and he's going to take it out on him, starts choking him out. But Bat-Mite uses his like ears to blast him with his 5th dimensional power and pauses him in his tracks. And now with this paralysis and this kind of trance he's in, Bob sees why Bat-Mite is here. He's kind of shown the story of why Bat-Mite's here. And it is because similar things are happening in the 5th dimension. In Bat-Mite's dimension, the same thing is happening where Bane broke out all the villains in Arkham, and then they just started attacking everyone. And this was a plan to wear down Bat-Mite in the same way that it's supposed to wear down the Batman of the normal universe. And, so he's taken everyone down, and then that left him vulnerable for Bane's attack. And oh my God, I love what he did with Bane. I think it's so funny how the toxin, or I think what he calls it here, it's toxic goes right into his nipples. That is so freaking funny. And it's like this big globs that like flow through the pipes right into his nipples and right into the back of his head. It's so funny. And Kevin O'Neill just like kind of takes the cartooning to 11. And like every time that Bane gets more and more of the toxic, he just gets bigger and bigger until the point where he is just like a crazy caricature of that Bane character. And how fun is that seeing Bane breaking Bat-Mite's back? Crack. Man, just such an iconic pose and splash already. So it's so fun to see it in this lens with a goofy character like Bat-Mite. I also love that he's got the TNT fists. Kevin O'Neill kind of did a similar joke where there was TNT on Batman's utility belt in the last story, and then he's getting fueled by just like pure hate. And he throws him off the roof, he crashes, and then now Bane is claiming that he is going to be the ruler of this dimension and no one can stop him. And after hearing this story, Bob is very sympathetic and he feels horrible that he went right back in his old ways of violence and he wants to be redeemed. He wants to do something right, do something good. And he says, yes, little fella, I will do it. I will save your world. And so maybe not the hero that Bat-Mite wanted, but he got somebody to help him. And now we get this transformation and we have chapter 2, Bane's Brood. And one thing too, when I forgot to mention, when Bob was going into the graveyard, he says that he wants to change his name. He's not going to be known by Bob Overdog anymore. That's his old name. He's now going to be known as Underdog. So he's fighting for the oppressed. But here, he kind of goes back to that where he is now the Overbat. He's not Batman, he's Overbat. And he gets this new costume. It's basically just the Azrael costume, which is really funny because it's like Kevin O'Neill isn't even really like playing this up that much. That is kind of what the costume was. He just put like that nuke belt on him. He's got big shells, like bullets all over him. So, it is a little bit goofier, but this is not that dissimilar to what it actually was. And man, what a cool little look at Bat-Mite there. That kind of does look like how Tony Daniel drew him in the Batman R.I.P. story. And it's really just like this story is so fun because, the original issue 38 came out in 1992 and was kind of playing on, where the 90s were going with violence and everything. But this special came out in 1995, which was actually after Knightfall had ended. Knightfall ran from around 93 to 94. It might have had a little bit more of setup before that, but it was a pretty long storyline. So this is kind of looking at it after it's over and kind of making fun of it and seeing just like all the tropes that it had. And if you thought Kevin O'Neill was making fun of the 90s before, he has truly seen where 90s comics have gone by 1995, and he is just like making fun of it as much as he can. Even just like the way he's rendering these muscles and everything, it's just so ridiculous, and I freaking love it. But just instantly, and we'll come back to this, but Bob just like full confidence just jumps off this building ready to go into action, and Bat-Mite's like, I haven't given you flying powers yet, which is so good that he's just like, okay, I got the suit, I'm gonna jump off. He's like, be confident, Bob. And Bob is just falling. And really cool, we flip the book here to see this dialogue where he says, just have faith and everything will be all right. But I love like he's so worried, and he's gotta get confident if he wants to survive. And then we cut from here, we're seeing more of what's going on Mite World in the meantime while Bob is falling. And we see that all the heroes have come together to take down Bane-Mite, and they're still not really a match. It looks like they might be able to take him. Everyone's coming, even like Lobo. He's a pretty tough dude. And I do love that everyone's in their 90s costumes, right? We've got Aquaman, and every limb except one is a hook. And then he's just smacking him with a fish. That is so funny. And then he's just like getting roided out, and then be gone. And he just knocks him away. And then this is really fun, just 6 panels of him just killing these heroes, just punches the Flash out of his suit, just stomps on this bug of Blue Beetle, burns Lobo, just squeezes Green Lantern, Shazam gets electrocuted, and then Martian Manhunter gets punched into Mars. And we're just seeing how everyone's basically done for. Bane does have these 3 lackeys. They kind of make fun of them because they're in Knightfall and they don't really serve much of a purpose, and they kind of make fun of that in this as well. And man, what a fun panel. Those eyes are just about to pop out of his head. He's just going crazy, and we get some good cartooning as he punches Robin so hard that his head just like spins around like a top. And what they were telling him was that, you're going to be screwed when the super family comes back, because I guess they were all out on a mission in space. And then now they're flying back home. And also kind of taking an opportunity to kind of make fun of the 90s Superman as well, right? This is definitely like post Death of Superman. So now we have like Superboy, Steel, and Cyborg Superman. I just like Kevin O'Neill is so much fun. He just puts jokes everywhere and fills the page with stuff. It says, who was the horse? Centaur, Greek guy, both. And then if you flip it like a flip book with answers, it says, answer, who cares? Just really making you like pay attention and like stay on these pages. It's so much fun. And then, you wouldn't have a villain. You wouldn't have this kind of story of a brooding evil guy without an origin story. And we have to hear Bane's origin now. He's got his lackey watching out for when the super family's going to return. He says, any sign of them? And he says, not yet, boss. And then we see in his telescope that he's just peeping in on a woman and not even looking to see if they're returning. So funny. What Bane does really well in this comic is he broods, and he sets in for a nice brood. As he's doing that, we hear his story, his origin. And this guy asks, boss, in all the time we have worked for you, despite all the times we've killed for you, you've never once told us what you brood about. He says, I could kill you with one blow for even asking, but I won't. The day after I was created, I was locked in a small box. We're just good cartooning with that expression behind the bars. And man, I just love how we can go cartoony to just purely grotesque. Each morning, I was unceremoniously hosed down with icy water. Man, so creepy. And I love all the bugs that are just crawling all over him. He just has nowhere to go. And each year on my birthday, I was transferred to a larger cage. There's only two things a man can do in this situation: isometric exercises and brooding. I excelled at both. So funny. And like, that's how he got so big. He was just doing isometric exercises in his box and just thinking about revenge, thinking about what he would be doing. He says, that's appalling. Who would do something like that to a kid? My father. Your father? Funny, like, this is also making fun of the 90s and especially like Knightfall, because it was a gigantic crossover that you had to read like everything to get the whole story. And he says, and if you want to know it, you'll have to buy Vengeance of Bat-Mite, $4.95 on sale soon. And they reference that again later in the story. I just love that it's like, we're not going to tell you what happened. You have to buy that book. And it never comes out. It's just a fun joke. But we cut back to Bob. He's finally flying now. So I guess he was confident enough to fly. Or maybe Bat-Mite is holding him up. And he stops this robbery, and then the police come and they pop away to Mite World. And just then is when the super family returns back to Mite World. And I love how they're just like kind of like falling down into Earth. We see Krypto's on a leash, but the cape got wrapped around Bizarro's head. Superman's definitely got that mullet going, definitely of the time. Supergirl's skirt is flying up. Steel's hammer's just terminal velocity pulling him down. And you even have this little Superman DC neat continuity is just like a living logo. So fun too. They have a special toxic that Bane's going to use to take down the super family. And when he does that, he gets even bigger than ever. And man, what a fun, just like widescreen panels. He just like gets so big that he's taking up every inch of it. And I just love how he shows that there's like material flowing through those pipes with those like globs. Oh, so fun. And just like random shapes for the muscles. Man, such fun cartooning. Everyone crashes down and then they're alerted of Bane and they go to fight him. Superman saying, I'll use my heat vision to fry him into submission. Superboy says, allow me to join you. And then Supergirl says, my X-ray vision will discover if he's wearing underpants. I mean, we'll make him sick from radiation poisoning. So funny. Steel's hammer's too far away. I don't know who this one's supposed to be, because like we saw Cyborg Superman earlier. He's right there across the page too. I don't know if this is just the death of Superman, but my super hype will soak up his loose change. So I guess it is just like the character is the death of Superman and how it was just a cash grab. Fun Bizarro drawing too. And then we show what they're doing, and all their attacks are just bouncing off and killing his minions. So funny. Like the heat vision just burning that guy. Her radiation poisoning is bouncing off and getting him, and then he's getting it too. Oh man. So there goes the minions. But then he makes very quick work of them, just knocks them out. breaks him. And then a really fun panel is he punches Superman so hard that he goes through the phone book, turns back to Clark, and then he punches him through time all the way back to the death of Krypton, and then through a black hole to come back to Earth. So fun. And then, man, then we see how big he's truly become. And if that's just not the best parody of just like a 90s beefed up drawing, I don't know what is. Like, this is kind of what like Rob Liefeld or like Image Comics was doing for real. So I think that's what Kevin O'Neill's definitely making fun of. And man, look at that. Just he's cackling as he just blasts them. But something in that toxic is definitely allowing him to take down the super family so easily. I think they might have revealed that it has some kind of kryptonite in there, so that's why he's able to do that. But we get to chapter 3, Mite End, and Overbat pops back in, and he's back on Mite World, and we see he's over like a gigantic volcano. So this kind of becomes this final test for Bob, a test of just his nerve. He says, I'm marooned here forever. No, I'm not a loser anymore. I'm a hero. I have to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm doing it. And then he walks, and then that's when Bat-Mite's saying, sorry for deserting you, Bob, but you had something to prove. And then we also get another pretty big piece of the 90s, and that is DC's Vertigo. So now we get to see Kevin O'Neill making fun of all the Vertigo characters from Sandman, Deadman, Swamp Thing, Shade the Changing Man, Demon, John Constantine. So we have all these freaks of the 90s hardcore Vertigo comics. And then we even get like Robot Man, so some Grant Morrison stuff, Dead Boy Detective. Man, so really fun that we get to see kind of like fully everything that was going on in the 90s. So really becomes, especially here, I think it hits home that this is truly like a parody of more the 90s than even just Knightfall. I love whenever Constantine, however you want to pronounce it, speaks, it's like mostly just bleeped out, so you can't really tell what he's saying. He's like, I'll stop Bane-Mite, I'll do it my way. And then we see another piece of what Bane's plan was. All of the supervillains that he released from Arkham are now working in his factory kind of as slaves, except for Ra's al Might, who is his who's helping him make this plan. And oh my god, I love this silhouette down here of Bane and Ra's. Man, just like I love how his head is kind of like a bowling pin and just like the gigantic body. And as he was whipping his whip, it actually like cuts off the end of the Penguin's nose, and then they're laughing at him down here. And his plan is that he made a cloning machine, and maybe he used some kind of like of the Lazarus pit or something. I think that might have been why he needed Ra's, but he turns it on and it just clones a bunch of Banes, and they all have those connectors on their nipples. So funny, but they're all jumping out. They kind of remind me of Frank Miller's The Mutant Leader from Dark Knight Returns as well. Anyone still want to argue? But great. Oh my god, just great cartooning. Have I said that yet? And he's got everyone ready. He's going to start injecting them with toxic, and once he does that, there's not going to be any stopping him. But before he can, Overbat appears. He's here to protect the oppressed, the underdog, in fact. So he's still Bob Underdog. Still has that original mission. I order you and your army to surrender. And Bane-Mite says, a human in Mite World? Fool, your doom is sealed. And then everyone starts jumping at him. And here, I love this kind of turn where it's like very dreamlike, very like, still like kind of like a drug-fueled nightmare kind of thing that Bob is going through. And he's like, you leave me no choice, Bane-Mite. But Bob starts to glow, and he puts up this like a holy sign with his fingers. And the glow, it hurts. What's he doing to us? Once, when I was under the influence of a hallucinogenic substance, I read something that I never forgot. It said that when the golden light of purity shines, no evil or corruption can exist in the glow that it casts. And then I love that, so it's got a little asterisk, and then you look down and it says, possibly in a Silver Surfer comic. Almost like a Deus Machina swoop in of like, how did he beat these guys? It's just like, oh, because he was pure. He's pure of heart. I love that kind of ending where it's because Bob turned a new leaf, right? He's trying to be better. He's trying to be a good guy. And in that, he's pure now. And in that purity, the evil is going to get wiped away. Stop the Bane. Which is funny. It's kind of random because, Bane-Mite has been fighting a bunch of superheroes, right? So it's like, aren't they pretty pure as well? But, not as pure as Bob. He says, I'm good, 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 good. And then a radiating blast just shoots out of him, destroying all the clones. And, he's still glowing there, and he's basking in the radiance of his victory, and everyone is cheering him on, and he goes over to Bane's body. Bane is dead, it looks like, and he takes off his helmet, and he pulls out the toxic. Looks pretty innocent for such powerful dope. I wonder what effect it would have on a human brain. And so here we just see Bob kind of falling into his old ways. He might have fought them with his new way of being a good person, but, he still has these addictive tendencies. He is still Bob Overdog, even though he wants to be Bob Underdog. And he's got his angel and devil fighting on what he should be doing. And right before he takes a snort, Bat-Mite says, "Bob, don't. That's a dangerous drug. We don't know what effects it will have on a human." Says, "Just once won't do no harm. It's probably safe as milk." He takes a big snort and boom, just loses all of his teeth. His eyes are shooting out of his head. Oh my God, he is instantly overdosing, and then his head explodes. If that isn't an anti-drug image, I don't know what is. But at least don't snort toxic. And so here's where we get slapped right back to reality. We have these two police officers walking through this cemetery, and they come across these drugs that are just laying on the ground, and right next to them is the body of Bob Overdog, and it is pretty gruesome. Kevin O'Neill did not hold any punches with that. We just see the broken bones. He's so mangled. What we find out is that Bob did not survive that fall. There's a little bit of connection here to the first Bob Overdog story they did in Legends of the Dark Knight 38, where it is a little bit up to the reader whether the events of the story happened or whether they were just all in Bob's mind the whole time. So we can go back to that moment, that very important moment where the comic flips upside down and everything. This moment in the very start of chapter 2, where Bob, before Bat-Mite gives him powers, just takes a leap of faith. And sadly, I don't think that leap paid off. So we see, and I think that's why this moment right here is really drawn to our attention. It even requires us to flip the book because it's such an important moment. And we see as he's falling, there's R.I.P., rest in peace on that tombstone, and we see where he's going to eventually land. So really cool kind of foreshadowing to it. And then even like in the story after that moment, we are cutting to Mite World, back to Bat-Mite in the fifth dimension talking about this. So it's kind of, we don't see Bob again. We're just kind of in Bat-Mite's perspective and Bane-Mite perspective. And then we finally catch back up with Bob Overdog here. So there's a little bit of a disconnect between those two scenes and what could have happened in between them, which I think is really cool and a really special thing that you can do with comics, because this medium, you kind of have things happening in between the gutters, and we have the ability to flip back and look at that moment. And when doing that, it brings more meaning to this. Like, that's not something that you can necessarily do on the spot when you're watching a movie or watching something on television. You can rewind and go back and see, oh, what did I miss? But with a comic, you, the reader, really get to control that page flip and time itself. So I think they're just using the medium of comics really well there. Must have taken a flyer off the tower. Look, he's got a straitjacket on. I recognize him. Bob Overdog. He was on the escape sheet Arkham Asylum put out. Looks like he smashed his head on the landing. Died instantly. We better call it in. Poor creep. What's his story? Nothing. He was just some worthless junkie. And here we get a very sad shot of Bat-Mite kind of looming over this lifeless body. And he doesn't even have his eyes. It's just his whole soul is gone. And we have on the tombstone, he hath left this place for paradise. As they just, without even thinking, just throw their cigarette butt on him. So really sad kind of look at, how the mentally ill are treated, and just how this guy who needed help is just kind of cast aside. No one in this whole Gotham world ever really listened to him. And when he had a chance to be a hero, it wasn't even maybe real. It was all in his mind. And I think that's just, what was the fifth dimension in this story? Was it just all something is this just Bob Overdog's imagination? Is it a real place? Is it heaven, hell? It's a lot of room for interpretation in this story, and I think that's what's really special about it. But we do get a happy ending, and, we see that Bob Overdog, or Bob Underdog's life meant for these people that he made an impact on. And, maybe those are imaginary people, or maybe they're this this world in the fifth dimension that's just out of reach, where a hopeless loser could have an impact, right? And so we have all of the mites are gathered together. I love that, there's the big cartoony sun in the sky, and we see that there's a big blanket covering something, almost looking like a skyscraper, and it's a really fun moment that it's a plastic man. Mite is the blanket. And we have all the Justice League, all the DC characters are here mourning. We are gathered today in tribute to a man who sacrificed his all so that we, strangers in a strange land, might go on living. Bob Overdog was a born loser. Even so, he shines as an example to all of us. For Bob fought to overcome his weaknesses, to turn back on the drugs he craved, to fight for the right and the good. The fact that he failed does not diminish his achievement. He failed in his denial of drugs, right? He still kind of fell into his normal routines and not being able to deny this instant gratification and pleasure. But, that doesn't diminish his whole life and who he was. He was more than that. It gives me pride and pleasure to unveil this statue, an everlasting memorial to the man who saved our world. 3 cheers for Overbat. Hip hip. Hooray! That's all, folks. And so we get a nice, fun, cartoony end, little reference to Looney Tunes. And I also like that Kevin O'Neill is just having a ton of fun drawing like every DC character and kind of making fun of them as well. And I do love that the statue of Bob is the Metal Men. Just a lot of affinity for DC Comics, while also kind of just like lampooning what they became in the 90s, right? I feel like it's like all these kind of like more golden age, silver age kind of interpretations of these characters kind of in the midst of like just the craziness of the 90s and just looking at how insane and over the top those stories got. Like everything had to be so intense and kind of forgot that, comics can just be fun. And that's what I think the takeaway of this issue is comics can be fun. And even in the darkest stories, there still can be light and there can be a way that creators can tell the stories that they want to. So I hope you guys have enjoyed looking at Batman Mitefall, the Legends of the Dark Mite special. And I definitely had a ton of fun looking at this. Like I said, the first issue, Legends of the Dark Knight 38, was like the 3rd video I ever posted on this channel. I'm really grateful to all of you that have been tuning in, watching my videos, liking, sharing, subscribing. It really means a lot. And I've had a lot of growth in this first year, and I'm really finding some really cool people on YouTube that like comics just like me. So if you're a comic freak like me and you've already subscribed, you're part of this channel, why not go a step further and check out some of the comics I make? I'm a self-published cartoonist, and you can find all of my work at danegeorges.com. I have a ton of comics on there, like Doomskull, which is about an ex-supervillain that works at a grocery store with his minion Bag Boy. I also have zines like The Passenger, which is a black and white horror story about picking up a hitchhiker. I have X-Ray, which is a collection of my 4-panel web comics that I would post on Instagram, Tapastic, and Webtoons. A lot of different kind of stories in there. And one of my newer books that I just finished posting on Instagram is Jigglybub, which is about a piece of gum that God spits out and he lands on Earth. And like I said, you can find all this at danegeorges.com, which I'll have linked in the description below. But thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time, remember to think and read dangerously.